Today's Winning Teams podcast is a slightly different version than we normally do have, but I'm thrilled to have my colleague Ray Collis along here to join us, because what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss some research that we've jointly undertaken about teams and how teams spend their time together and the value of that team. And I'll ask Ray to go a little bit more into the detail of the research in a moment. But let me just kind of talk a little bit about some of the key findings of that, which are quite startling. What we've discovered in the research we've done is that 70% of time is spent in collaboration in one sort or another, whether that's in one-to-one meetings or team meetings or whatever, which is a lot. But the scary thing is that we know from the research that 47% of that is wasted and adds no value. And when you convert that 47%, that equates to about 1.9 days that is spent on poor collaboration, which effectively means that, you know, if you were looking at your week, that you might as well at 10 o'clock on Thursday, you might as well go home, play golf, play hooky, go shopping, or whatever it is that floats your boat. But that's the bad news. And the good news is that, you know, it would give all our teams, if we were to fix this, and it is fixable, it would give each member of the team an additional 14 hours per week. Now, I think if you were to ask anybody on a team, what could they do with 14 hours additional, that would just to include in the week, they would just be absolutely over the moon about it. But would also deliver, from the team perspective, would deliver an equivalent of 3.7 full-time equivalents to the team, which is astounding. Ray, it's amazing stuff, isn't it? I mean, it's extraordinary research. Maybe you might just tell us a bit about the background.
Well, it is really exciting, because if it was a software program or piece of technology that could promise to deliver us, you know, an hour and a half, 4 hours, 5 hours a week, we would certainly think it was worth paying several $100s for. But this is free. And what this research is based on quite a bit of data, but I'll just go to the highlights. So we pulled together data from 900 managers across a range of different industries, across 12 industries and 47 markets. So it's quite a diversity there. Some of these are financial controllers, some of these are sales managers, some of them are HRD. So we've got quite a diverse perspective there. And what's consistent across this, because the number that you quoted, the 70% of time spent in collaboration, the fact that 37% of our entire working week may be adding no value because that collaboration is time spent on internal collaboration isn't giving a reward. That data that's the average. So there's a lot of people higher, there's a lot of people lower. And it really is reminding us of the great opportunity that we have to plan and engage with our weeks in a different manner in which we can give our colleagues and ourselves back some of this precious resource, which is our time.
It is extraordinary, because to an extent, one of the things when we actually did the research and we're looking at it is that, you know, intuitively we kind of know this, because we know from working with teams, and we've both worked with hundreds of teams, we know from working with teams that, you know, a common complaint is, oh dear God almighty, the amount of time we spend kind of wall to wall with meetings. But this is really making it, you know, kind of very stark, isn't it, in terms of, you know, this is kind of really putting numbers to that gut feeling, and it is quite startling that it is that extreme, isn't it?
It absolutely is. None of us are surprised that the amount of time we're spending on internal collaboration, on emails and meetings and circulating reports, on all these activities is growing. And you know what? This is a trend that's not going to stop. There is going to be more collaboration. I guess the key challenge for us all is the realization is that we need to address the issue of when is the right time to collaborate and not. When is it effective and not? And we need to make some changes there, which will give some time back to ourselves and to others. It's no surprise, but I guess when you put a number on it, and when you talk about Thursday at 10 o'clock and going home versus wasting the rest of the week in internal collaboration that doesn't add value, it really brings it home. So it's a rallying call, I think, for us all.
And the point that you're making there is important, because it's not that we're saying be less collaborative. That's not the message that we're making, because the truth is that we know we actually need to be more collaborative, but it's not just measured in time. And it's really kind of figuring out, you and I were talking about it recently, and I was sharing the story with you that I went one company I was working with, and they asked me to sit in at their management meeting just to give my perspective on it. And I hadn't been at one of their management meetings before. And it started at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was due to finish at 6 o'clock, and I started counting the number of PowerPoint slides. And it was just, I gave up when I got to about 150, and I still wasn't at 10 o'clock. And, you really and truly talking to people there, they were just enduring it. There were some people on their laptops, there were people on phones, there were people just not concentrating, there were people doing, whatever it might be, but not engaged. It was such an incredible waste of time. And there were 20 people at that meeting. So multiply it across, it was just a massive waste of time. But I'm just curious from the perspective, why do we allow that to continue to happen?
Well, John, I don't think there was anybody sitting in that meeting the day that you described there who left energized and invigorated. So it wasn't working for anybody. It just operates beneath the level of conscious awareness that we think, how are we going to work together today effectively? This is such an important opportunity for organizations, because we work with a management team over the last 8 months who became simply more aware of how they work together and when they work together and when they shouldn't work together. And this senior leadership team in a large organization made a simple decision. Every meeting ended by spending 10 to 15 minutes discussing, how did we meet today? Mm-hmm. Simple question. How well did we meet today? Did we achieve the objectives we'd set? But also, going forward to our next meeting, what will we bring forward? What went well today? And what will we leave behind? And that simple act of bringing attention and focus to this resulted in a progressively getting better at organizing and structuring our meetings to make sure that they have meaning and value for all the participants. Sometimes at saying that certain people can leave at certain times because certain business has been dealt with that doesn't now require a whole group of people to be together. But that simple act of bringing awareness to it is enough to readdress and to fundamentally change how we meet. So they call that team reflexivity, this idea of standing back and reflecting on how well have we worked together today, what we bring forward and what we leave behind.
Just curious, with that particular team, did they have a criteria by which they were assessing themselves against?
Yes, they used a simple framework, I think, which is, they talked about the level of energy. They talked about the level of engagement in the meeting. And they talked about the level of exploration. So, and those couple of things I think are important in terms of, if there isn't energy in a meeting, then I think that's the key indicator of the effectiveness of a meeting. When the energy begins to go down, and that energy can be, we can see that on people's faces, can't we? When that energy goes down, that's the first, I think, warning sign that there's something wrong here. Why are we here? Are we achieving what we need to achieve? Do we need to take a break, get some fresh air? All these simple activities, but it's that act of bringing awareness to it, rather than sitting through and saying, oh, no, it'll be over in 2 hours, or it'll be over in 90 minutes, and just numbing your way through it.
I think we also get into a pattern that, it's Monday morning and we have our meeting. So it becomes very routine, and it becomes, we're just here and we go through the motions, but nobody is actually saying, hang on a second, this is a dreadful waste of time, or, and I just wonder, sometimes I often wonder why it is that people don't call this out, because it's not as if they're not aware of it, but is it something about the way the culture of the organization? Is it something about that they don't want to challenge the leader? Where does it come from, do you think? Because, you talk to anybody and they all say it's not working, but nobody's actually doing something about it, which I always find that kind of fascinating, that nobody kind of says, hold on a second, let's actually change this.
I think this is the great thing. It's where you or I can put our hand up and say, hold on a second. Or at the end of a meeting can say, can we spend 5 minutes just reviewing what we achieved and what we did well, what we bring forward and what we leave behind. We can all, it's up to somebody to take the lead role on this. And I always think, if you want an extra hour or two a week for yourself, and let's be selfish about it, but if you want an extra hour or two or 3 or 4 for yourself to take back control of your work, then I think the greatest way to start is by helping others to save time. So I think that starts with small acts, John, such as, for example, before you add 5 CCs to the email, think twice. Mm. Anybody you can take off that email, you're doing them a service. Your meeting, who doesn't need to be there? And if the meeting is addressing 3 core issues, then perhaps each issue has a different attendee list, for example. So again, just respecting people's time and giving people back more time by calling it when the collaboration isn't required or when it's not as effective as it needs to be. And if we give other people back time, and we help them to identify ways in which we can work more effectively with them, that's a two-way street. We'll all begin to benefit. I think it's about increasing this muscle, which is our collaborative muscle, and the intelligence behind that in terms of, I think collaboration always has a price, but it's about making sure that the reward is there to equal this price in terms of not just the time, but also the energy, the patience, or in terms of these long, dreadful meetings without an end or insight or without a clear purpose. There's a frustration that goes with that.
Yeah, it's just when you were talking there, it just struck me that, and I'm just thinking of different organizations. If there was a decision that, okay, well, not everybody has to meet at every meeting, then that actually does necessitate that there's a high level of trust in that team, right? Because, you do have this kind of FOMO, the fear of missing out, or what are they talking about if I'm not in the room? So there's a trust that you do have the right people, and the trust that I don't have to be there and I'm not being excluded. And so that does come back to the level of trust within a team that you can actually do that. And if you do that effectively, and I agree with you, I think that people don't have to be at the meeting. But I think for this to be useful to people, I think that the point that you're making is that we can do something about it. I think the things that you're talking about are very useful. There's also being really clear at the very beginning, what is the objective of the meeting? What are we actually trying to achieve here? I worked with a team recently, and one of the things that they brought out about their own meetings, which they found frustrating, is that people didn't come to the meetings prepared. And therefore, they came to the meeting. There might have been a document circulated, the day or a week beforehand to discuss. But then, when they came to the meeting and they hadn't read it. And then that was frustrating because some people had, some people hadn't. And then people were asking, well, what's in it? And that was really frustrating. So there are things like that, to come prepared, to start on time. I think also the discipline about having a finishing time is really, really important, and that it's a hard finishing time. But I think the other thing is looking at that we just don't have meetings for the sake of meetings, and maybe our weekly meeting has got a certain objective and our fortnightly or monthly meeting has got a different objective. Have you found something like that works?
I think absolutely, John. I think this, as I say, collaboration always has a cost, because you've got 6 or 7 people or 3 or 4 people sitting around the table. The cost of what they're not doing, as well as the cost of their salary and everything else with them being there. It comes back down to, I think, to really respecting and valuing time as the essential resource within an organization that's so very limited. So few of us aren't complaining about to-do lists that are bulging and email inboxes that are overflowing. That this decision to interrupt this pattern and begin to pay attention to how we organize our collective work, inputs and outputs, and I think that it starts there. Because oftentimes what we find, John, and I'm sure you find the same, is that the person often who is most responsible or has at least the greatest ability to intervene in this is the leader. And sometimes there's a secondary benefit for the leader to bring all his people together into one plenary session and get it all over it in one go. Whereas for a lot of the discussion within that meeting or engagement, not everybody needs to be there, and it's not relevant to everybody. I love the Jeff Bezos idea, which is 2 pizzas. If you can't feed the people who are in the meeting with 2 pizzas, you probably have too many people. And that in itself is an important starting point. Say, let's cut down the number of people, because the number of people is greatly linked to the value and the outcomes of the meeting.
Yeah, I think you're looking at the collaboration, and I've heard you talk about it a number of times, is that the meetings and the way we run our meetings is kind of a reflection of how we work overall. You might talk to that, because I've heard you talk about that really well in terms of how you structure your work, how you prioritize your work, and how you block it.
I think, John, if you want to understand how an organization works, you could stand in the car park and look at the building and look inside. You could stand in the foyer and try and pick up a sense of what the culture and the style of the organization is. But I think if you really want to know what an organization's like, step inside the meeting room on the top floor, step inside a board meeting, a senior leadership team meeting, or a department head meeting, and observe. Mm-hmm. And I think in the course of that interaction, in the course of how it's structured, in the course of the behaviors that one sees, an organization is revealed. Mm. And I think this is the great thing. And I think because if you can't, somebody said to me once, I think, if you can't see energy, Ray, in the meeting, in the dialogue and the discussion about that key priority or strategy, don't be surprised if you don't see energy when it comes to it being executed upon. I think these meetings are hugely important because there are opportunities for us to come together to energize each other and to engage and to share ideas. But there's a lot more to it than simply bringing a group of people together and expecting to get this wonderful chemistry and high performance. That's not what's happening. We need to be more deliberate about it. We need to respect this tool of collaboration and use it very wisely. Use it very wisely rather than to let it get blunted so much within our organization.
That's true, because at the end of the day, you do see how a team operates when you actually observe them at a meeting, and it is a good picture of how they function. And I think that when you look at it, all of the work that we do with teams and all of the work that leaders strive to do with their teams is about optimizing the potential of the team that they have. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what any leader is tasked to do, but it's also the responsibility of the individual members of the team. And we know from all of the work that we've done with teams and the data that we collect. I mean, there's such a volume of data, which this research is evidence of. But we know from the research that only 61% of potential is being realized. The average is 61% of potential being realized, which on the one hand you could be quite negative about, but I mean, you and I, we can look and say, well, listen, wow, look at the amount of untapped potential. And this comes down to, very often it comes down to the way we work. It's not a lack of ability, or it's not a lack of knowledge, or it's not a lack of skill, but it's actually a lack of really understanding how to leverage that, isn't it?
I think what you said there is dynamite, isn't it, John? And it really is such a positive news story that you can have from 10 o'clock on Thursday back, and you can give it back not just to yourself but to your team. That within teams, typically within organizations and teams, that up to 40% of their potential is there for the grabs. It's there, and that potential and that time is real, because it goes to the heart of all these challenges we face in business today, which is about agility, innovation, the ability to collaborate, flexibility, all these things that hinge on an effective collaboration. That it's not just about time, it's about energy, it's about innovation, it's about engagement, it's all these things. And I think that's where it's a huge potential win for organizations, and one that's there easy to grab. And you know what? I want to throw something back at you, John, because I think it's a point you always raise, which I think is very important, that this is not just about meetings.
Absolutely. And it does kind of go right across the board. And I think that, I always try and bring it back to numbers, because it actually brings it home. And, talking to a group recently, and we said, okay, there were about 6 people in the room. If you take just very rough figures and making the figures easy to do, the annual cost of that team was probably somewhere around $1 million, right? So if we said to them, okay, I'm going to give you 40% of that, right, as an additional budget next year, would you be happy with it? And they said, they take your arm off to get that 40%. I say, but you actually do have it. You already have it. You're just not actually leveraging it. And I think, when you look at all the data, I said, of which this research is part of, there is the potential to really go down and dig down deeper. And I think that, excuse me, what we're talking about here with the meetings and the collaboration, there are things that you can do that's going to, they give you some quick wins that, it might not be that you knock off at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning, but, you might get to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon and get that much back, and you can get that back quicker. But there's a lot more that you can get if you really want to dig down and go through the sort of the analysis that we do with teams. There's a lot more there, isn't there?
Well, I think this is the key thing in that it's meetings and it's a lot more. It's how we work together. It's how we collaborate. And it's about how we plan and structure our work. And when that's not individual work, it brings an extra dimension to it because we now got to coordinate and engage with others. And we talk about, the design of how we deliver performance within an organization and how we unlock potential. We talk about having the right people in the right roles, doing the right work, working together in the right way with the right resources and so on. And so it's back down to these more practical decisions that we need to make and be clear about how we organize and structure our work, recognizing that time is a very precious resource, and related to that, the energy and engagement of our people. So it's very fundamental, back to basics in terms of planning and structuring and organizing how we work together as a team, and the culture and the behaviors that support that allow us to move into this exciting future, which is going to be about the future work, which is more collaborative, more innovative, requires a higher level of engagement and so on. Because I think what's been happening with this figure about Thursday at 10 o'clock is that we have this battle for talent within our organizations where we're looking for high performers and we want to unlock their potential. But we're putting them in an environment where at 10 o'clock on Thursday, these high performers might as well just go home or go golfing. So, and essentially the battle of talent is happening on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday until 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, when we raise the white flag and say talent and engagement and potential and performance, and it doesn't matter anymore. We can just let this resource be used in this inefficient way.
I think that, when you talk about, you talked about engagement there quite a lot, and we know that the future for retention of the quality staff that we're hiring, and particularly in the millennials, is about that level of engagement. And if we're wasting so much of their time, we are going to disengage them. So, from so many different aspects, this whole thing about, engaging them and being efficient and really, really making sure that we're optimizing the time that they have with us and working together is really critical. And I say, certainly, I think that the good news for anyone listening and watching this is that, there are some quick wins. And I would say to anybody that, there is this report which you can get from us. And we'll talk a little bit about where you can get that in a second. But also, that's to really get you some quick wins. And I think you can get some quick wins. But I think also the message that I would have would be that, if you want to go deeper, there's, we can dig a lot deeper with you. We can do the analytics for you. We can show you your data to understand where and what are the levers that you should be really pressing to raise that potential higher than the 61%.
I think you're very right there, John. I think the first wins on this are quick wins in terms of getting that 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock and 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock or 12:15, maybe even getting the lunchtime. I think those are things we can do pretty quick ourselves in terms of making some conscious decisions in terms of just being more aware. But there are structural issues there. There's behavioral cultural issues as well that maybe require a deeper fix because, there is a structure within our organizations. There's a way of doing things which has evolved and which has become part of our process. So there is some heavy lifting to be done to get that to swing up till 4 o'clock on Thursday or to get it into Friday. And that's stuff that certainly we bring tools and technologies to enable managers to do that. But it's a very positive story. Either way, you can only win. If you're already spending 1.9 days a week ineffectively, and that effectively has been wasted by poor collaboration, and it's frustrating you too, then the only way is up as far as I'm concerned. Let's get that back to 1.7, let's get back to 1.6, and then also let's address some of the fundamental issues as well.
Absolutely. Ray, it's been great to have this discussion. We when we actually saw the data and started putting it together, we just thought this needed to be shared, and it's great to have you along today to do that.
Great to chat to you today, John, too, and I hope our collaboration has added value.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you want to get more information, you want to get a copy of the research, then please, you can email me at john@johnmurphyinternational.com and I will send it on to you. And I'll be delighted for you to have a look at that. And I would also love to get your feedback.